Hey friends, let's talk about something that sounds promising at first, but definitely deserves a closer look. So here's what's going on. The town of Ajax is offering homeowners up to $12,000 to build additional dwelling units on their property. So that could mean finishing your basement as a rental, or converting a garage into a living space, or even building a garden suite in your backyard. But here's the real question. Is that cash incentive actually worth it when you look at everything that is involved in these type of projects? That's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's video. Hi there, for those new to my channel, welcome. I'm Sonia Ramgobin, realtor with RE/MAX, servicing the Durham region and the GTA. And as always, my hope is that these videos keep you informed and help you navigate the real estate market with confidence. So while I was reading this local Durham Region newsletter, this is where I came across this information that the town of Ajax is offering cashback incentives to homeowners who build additional dwelling units on their property. So since I also invest in real estate, this definitely caught my attention, and I wanted to dig a little bit deeper to understand what this program was really about. But the more I looked into the details, the more I started to feel like this program might be a bit misleading, especially if you're not fully aware of everything that's involved in these type of projects. So with that said, I'm going to give you a clear and honest breakdown of how this program works, what it actually takes to build a legal unit, and the key things that you might want to consider before starting a project like this. And just so that you guys know, I've personally gone through this process myself. All of my investment properties have legal multi-unit setups, so I can definitely give you my honest feedback based on my experience with this process. All right, so what exactly is an additional dwelling unit, also known as ADU? So if we take a look at the Town of Ajax website, an ADU is defined as a separate living space on your property meant for family members or tenants to live in. And it must contain a kitchen, bathroom, and an entrance to the outside. So there are a few different types of ADUs that you can build. One is a garden suite, which is a unit that you can build in your backyard. You can also have a basement apartment or a main floor unit, which many of us are already familiar with. And then there's something called a garage conversion. And this is when you're turning your existing garage into a livable space. Now, under this new policy, homeowners in Ajax are allowed to build up to 3 ADUs on a single property. So that could mean you can have a total of 4 residential units on one lot. So let me explain that a little bit further. Okay, so as I mentioned, within one property, so this one home, I am allowed to build a maximum of 3 additional units. So that could be a garage unit, a basement unit, or my garden unit, right? I don't have to build 3 units, but that's the maximum amount that I can build. Now, if I were to build a maximum of 3 units, then that would mean I would have a total of 4 legal residential units within my one property. So I would have a legal unit in my garage, my basement, my main floor, and my backyard. Now let's talk about how this grant really works. So let's say you wanted to build 1 additional unit within your one property. So that would mean, let's say for example, it's the basement unit. Then you would be eligible for a grant of $2,000. Now let's say you wanted to build 2 units within your one property. Let's say for example, the garage unit and a basement unit. Then you would be eligible for a total of $6,000 grant. And let's say you wanted to go all out, right? And you wanted to do the maximum amount that's allowed, and you wanted to go ahead and build 3 additional units within your one property. Then at that time, you would be eligible for a grant of $12,000. Okay, so one important thing to keep in mind is that these grants are not guaranteed. They're on a first come, first served basis, and only while funding lasts. And even if you do qualify for this cash incentive, remember that it isn't paid out right away. You will only receive the funds after the unit is fully built, it passes all inspections, and the permit is officially closed. So it could be a while before you actually see that money in hand. All right, let's get into the technical side of things. If you're thinking about building an ADU on your property, the very first thing that you need to check is whether your property is zoned for it. So if it isn't zoned for it, you won't be able to get the permits you need, which means that you won't be able to move forward with construction and you will have no access to this grant. So how do you find out if your property is zoned for an ADU? So it's actually pretty straightforward. You would contact the Town of Ajax Building and Permit Department by phone or email, and they will confirm whether your property is zoned for an ADU. They will also explain any specific zoning restrictions for your area, and they will walk you through the early steps of this process. So I'll drop all that contact information in the description box below to make it easy for you to access. Now, once you have confirmed that your zoning is good, the next thing you're going to want to consider is parking. So in Ajax, any additional unit must have at least one dedicated parking space. So you would need to take a good look at your driveway. If there's not enough room, then that alone could stop this project from moving forward. All right. So if zoning and parking are good, then you can move on to the permit process. So getting a building permit is what makes this additional unit legal, safe, and ready to rent. And it's absolutely required if you want to qualify for this grant. So to get started, head over to housing.ajax.ca. Click on the yellow tab that says Learn More and Apply, and then you'll see a 3-step process that's laid out clearly. So step 1 is reviewing the building permit checklist. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. The first time I took a look at this checklist, I found it to be so overwhelming. So I ended up calling the building and permit department directly, and this call made a huge difference. I got to speak with a representative directly. I was able to ask all of my questions, and they walked me through the entire process step by step. So I highly recommend doing the same if you're unsure about anything, because it can save you a ton of time and frustration compared to just trying to figure it all out on your own. Also, keep in mind that the permits and tasks that you will be required to complete will vary depending on the type of work that you're doing. So that's why talking to someone at the department is so helpful, because they can tell you exactly what applies to your specific situation. So for example, if you're turning a garage into a rental unit, you might need permits for things like adding insulation or plumbing or adding windows. And that's going to be pretty different from finishing a basement, where you might need to focus more on things like safety or making structural changes. So again, don't guess your way through it. Reach out, ask questions, and make sure you set yourself up properly right from the start. It totally makes a difference. Next is step 2, which is creating your detailed drawing designs. And this part is really important. So these drawings need to clearly show your floor plan, where the plumbing and where the electrical will go, and how the unit will meet fire safety standards. So basically, it's the blueprint that shows exactly how everything will be built. So you usually need a qualified building designer to create this for you, because this is not really something that most people can do themselves. So the good news is that the website makes it easy by giving you a list of approved building designers that you can choose from. So if you're not sure where to start, you can use that list to find a professional who knows what the town is looking for and can help you get those plans approved faster. And here's a tip. Hire someone experienced with ADUs in Ajax specifically. That can save you a lot of back and forth later in the process, because they will already understand the local codes and what the inspectors will be looking for, which will make everything run a lot more smoothly. And finally, step 3 is where you submit everything through the town's online application portal. So that includes your design drawings, your application forms, and any other required documents. So once you've submitted these documents, the town will then review your plans and make sure everything follows the Ontario Building Code, local zoning rules, and fire safety regulations. So if something doesn't meet the requirements, they will send it back with comments, and that way you can make the necessary changes. Now, once your plans are approved, you'll be issued your building permit, and that is when you can officially begin construction. But you're not quite done yet. As the work progresses, the town will inspect the project at key stages. So for example, once framing is complete, an inspection will be done. Then after that, once your plumbing work is finished, and that's when another inspection will be done, so on and so forth. And then finally, when all the construction is done, you will have a final inspection. So essentially, you need to pass each inspection before you can move forward to the next stage. Now, when your project passes the final inspection, your permit will be officially closed. That means your ADU is now fully legal, safe, and ready to rent. And this is at the point where you could receive the cash incentive. So that's a full breakdown of the permit process. I know it's a lot, but I wanted to walk you through each step so you can understand what's really involved and be better prepared to decide if taking on a project like this, it makes any sense for you. Now, if you're thinking about adding an ADU to your property, I'm going to be really honest with you. This grant wouldn't be the reason that I take on such a project. The amount being offered doesn't come close to covering what is actually going to cost you in building a proper legal unit. So once you factor in design fees, permits, material, contractors, inspections, you're easily looking at tens of thousands of dollars out of your pocket, right? The grant, I guess, is a nice gesture, but financially, it's not a game changer. So if you're considering a project like this, it really has to make sense for you long term, whether that mean you're doing it to make extra space for your family or creating a rental income or increasing the value of your property. So with that being said, I understand what the town of Ajax is trying to do by encouraging more housing options, but by asking individual homeowners to take on such a big responsibility with very limited financial support just doesn't seem realistic to me. What do you think? Would you take on a project like this? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And if you found this video helpful, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit from this information. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.